Welcome to the Word for Life podcast, a daily devotional covering the entire Bible from Genesis to Revelation.
In Deuteronomy chapter 3, we read about the end of two giants, a physical and a spiritual giant. First, the spiritual giant. In verse 1, Moses reminds Israel of how they met Og, king of Bashan, who marched against Israel with his whole army. In verse 11, Moses says, "This Og of Bashan was the last of the giant tribe called the Rephites. His bed was more than 14 feet long and 6 feet wide. Yet the Lord delivered this giant and his entire army into the hands of Israel." The point Moses is trying to make is, if God was powerful enough to defeat this giant king through Israel, they must now be confident of defeating their future enemies in the promised land which they are about to enter in some time. Israel must not be afraid, but look to God for strength. Because even before they entered the promised land, God had already started showing His power that was available for Israel. Moses also points out in verse 4 and 5 how there was not one of the 60 cities that they did not take from them, fortified with high walls and with gates and bars, and there were also a great many unwalled villages. Friends, this story of conquest was a once-in-a-lifetime event. This cannot be repeated or taken as a model today. This story does not grant permission for modern Israel or the followers of Christ to destroy other nations. This was a divine judgment on nations that sinned against the Lord for a long period of time at that time in history. It was God who chased them out of His land and replaced them with Israelites. It was God who brought in new tenants to His land. Also, we must remember that if Israel also defiled the land that God gave them, like these other nations, God will execute the same judgment on them as well. But on the other hand, this story explains the power of God over the powerful giants of the world. When they displease God, no matter how powerful they are, they will be overthrown and replaced. The next story also says something similar. Moses was a spiritual giant. The Lord had shown powerful miracles through him in Egypt and beyond. This was the man who had a unique encounter with the Lord, so much so that his face shone and the Israelites could not look at his face. He was the spiritual giant who stayed at Mount Sinai for 40 days and received the law for Israel. He was the giant who split the Red Sea and brought water from the rock. The Lord listened to his prayer more than once and forgave Israel's sin. Yet in verse 23 to 27, Moses told the Israelites, "At that time I pleaded with the Lord, 'Sovereign Lord, let me go over and see the good land beyond the Jordan.' But because of you, the Lord was angry with me and would not listen to me. 'That is enough,' the Lord said. 'Do not speak to me any more about this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah. Look at the land across this Jordan.'" You see, Moses, the spiritual giant, was not so powerful after all. He was not able to override God's decision. His end came before Israel entered Canaan. Friends, the Lord is the greatest power on earth. These two stories remind us of how we too must serve the Lord as He wants us to. We may even have a great army. We may appear big in so many ways. We may have so many spiritual achievements. But we too need to learn to walk in obedience to His will and purpose. Because our Lord Jesus is actually the judge of all the earth. In John chapter 5, verse 25 to 27, our Lord Jesus said this, "Very truly I tell you, a time is coming and has now come when the dead will hear the voice of the Son of God, and those who hear will live. For as the Father has life in Himself, so He has granted the Son also to have life in Himself, and He has given Him authority to judge because He is the Son of Man. See Christ as over all and submit to Him every day."
Thanks for listening. We'll see you tomorrow for the next episode of the Word for Life podcast.